let me show you what's happening on my hard drive. If I go into the folder that we mentioned, the local Microsoft Visual Studio, this is the version that the main instance of Visual Studio uses, and this is the experimental version, and the Microsoft extensions are in here, and mine is in here. And again, my name and 1.0 for the version number, because that's what we put in the manifest. And you see that what it's copied in here is the V6 manifest and some handy DLLs. Now you might be tempted to start thinking like, okay, I'll gather these up and I'll tell somebody where to put them, but that would be the totally wrong, hard way to do things. The V6 format takes care of this for you, and it's totally much, much simpler than that. Let's go to this folder that our project is in. And drill into the debug, and you'll see we've got all kinds of DLLs and XMLs and manifests and so on, and then we have this file called todomarker.v6. And this all on its own is our unit of deployment for all that we need to deploy this extension to a friend, a customer, the community, whoever we'd like to share it with. So first let me just show you that V6 file, despite the fact that Windows Explorer knows what it is and you can see down here in the properties, it's really just a renamed zip file. So I'm going to copy this one and rename it to .zip, and then open up that zip file, and you can see it's got DLLs in it, it's got a manifest, and then it's got something explaining how to understand the rest of the content of it. So this is what a V6 is. It's just a zip file that's been constructed properly, and you could, in theory, make these zip files yourself. It's really much simpler to let Visual Studio make them for you, but that's a possibility that you could do. Now, what I'd like to do is bring up Extensions Manager one more time, and this time we'll go to the online gallery. This is actually connecting to the Visual Studio gallery and bringing me back information about extensions that I can download and install into Visual Studio right from this dialog. So let's see what it's got for me. Here you can see a number of different extensions, a little bit of a description here, rating and number of downloads. And this information is in fact the same familiar to some of us information that was on the Visual Studio Gallery before and is there now. So let's bring up a browser and we'll go to visualstudiogallery.com. You can see here that there are all kinds of templates, extensions, add-ins, and whatnot available to you for free, most of them. Some of them are download for pay, and some are free trial. Let's restrict ourselves to free extensions. There are many of those. And furthermore, just to things that are for Visual Studio 2010. You can see there's still almost 100 at the date that I was doing this. And you've got all kinds of control. You can sort these by, say, how popular they are, how new they are. If you go here all the time, you might only want to see what's new. And the information that's being shown to you in these two places is exactly the same information. So you see here that this has a 5-star rating with 10 votes, 1,606 downloads, and it appears first. If I pop back to Visual Studio, it appears first. It has 1,606 downloads and 10 votes, giving it a 5-star rating. So it's simply two ways of getting to the exact same information. Now, one of the things I'd like to show you in here, just to kind of prove something, is if you go to get one of these extensions. So let's take a look, for example, at Power Commands. If I click the download, up comes, do you want to open or save this file? And you see that the type of the file is .v6. This is what we're saying, that the kind of unit of deployment to the gallery and amongst your friends and so forth and so on is the v6 file. And it's really a very self-describing and a very powerful way to get your stuff uploaded and to get your stuff downloaded. Let me give you an example. If we were to try to upload our little to-do marker, simply hitting upload on the gallery, and that button is on just about every page, it asks you one question. Is this a tool, a control, or a project or item template? Well, it's an editor extension. It's not a project or item template, that's for sure. It's not a control, so that must leave tool. So there's some nice explanation here that you could have an MSI or you could have an EXE, but really if you're starting from scratch, use a V6 because it's just so much more powerful when you go to do the install. What's amazing to me, having done my fair share of uploading bits and pieces to community sites over the years, is that the next step is step 2 of 2. There's no more after this. If you want to upload your tool and it's a V6 file, there is no need to fill out that rest of a form which says what's my name, what's my product, what does it do, what's the description. All that information is in the V6 itself. So all I would need to do is browse to the file, upload it, and the gallery can go through the manifest and put the right information available for people to understand what they want to download. The other interesting thing about the gallery is this. If you want to do extension development, you're going to need the Visual Studio SDK. And the best way to get it is from the gallery. Just type SDK in the search box and hit enter. And there's the top hit, the Visual Studio 2010 SDK. Free, no kidding, and highly rated. But even better than downloading it from a browser and then dealing with the install is doing it from inside Visual Studio. So SDK right here. And the first hit here is for the SDK. And you can hit the download button and actually get that SDK installed without ever leaving Visual Studio. Now why don't we pretend for a moment that we uploaded this V6 file to the gallery, or that we emailed it to a friend, or that we put it on a USB drive and gave it to a friend, or that we burned it onto a CD and gave it to someone, or whatever. And somebody has come into possession of this V6 file. And I'm just going to simulate that by copying it to my desktop. So however it got here, there is the file. Now let's just briefly confirm in Visual Studio that I don't have any extensions installed in the regular main instance of Visual Studio. I'm going to just double click the V6. It asks me one question. Do you want to install this into Visual Studio 2010? I don't see what else I could want, so I go ahead and say install, and it says I've done that. Close and open Visual Studio. Okay. Just close that. And then start it again. We now go bring on the extension manager one more time. And our extension is now installed into the main Visual Studio simply by doing nothing more than double clicking on that V6 file. It's completely self-contained, has all the resources and DLLs that we need. It installs flawlessly, and it's working live. If I change the text and change it back and get the circles to go away and appear again, the V6 file makes it super easy to get your extensions hooked into Visual Studio very easily. But double click it and you're done.